she wasn't born into poverty. She didn't come with scars, shame, or sorrow. Just a shepherd girl tending her father's flocks in the fields of Paddan Aram. A beautiful young woman living under the open sky, free and unburdened. Yet she was chosen, not by arranged negotiation, not by family connection alone. She was loved at first sight, pursued with passion so fierce that 7 years felt like mere days. But while she possessed the beauty every woman envied, and the love every heart craved, a quiet battle was brewing. One that wouldn't be fought with weapons or words, but with barrenness, jealousy, and the agony of watching another woman bear the children she desperately wanted. Her name was Rachel. And this isn't just the story of a beloved wife. It's the story of how the most beautiful woman in the room can still be the most broken, and how sometimes God's greatest gifts come wrapped in our deepest pain. In the days of Laban, who lived in the land of Paddan Aram far east of Canaan, his household prospered with flocks and herds. He had 2 daughters, and their lives could not have been more different. Leah, the older sister, had tender eyes, weak and unremarkable. She moved through life quietly, already knowing she would always live in shadow. But Rachel, the younger daughter, was stunning beyond words. The scripture describes her with language reserved for only the most exceptional beauty, beautiful of form and appearance. In a culture where physical beauty opened doors and shaped destinies, Rachel had been given everything. Her face could stop a conversation. Her presence could transform a room. Men didn't just notice Rachel, they were captivated by her. Every day, Rachel would take her father's sheep to the well, a task that was both duty and pleasure. She moved with grace and confidence, knowing the effect she had on those around her. The well was a gathering place, where shepherds met, where news was exchanged, where life happened. And Rachel belonged there, vibrant and alive, the most beautiful woman anyone had ever seen. But she had no idea that one ordinary day at that well would change everything. That a stranger would arrive who would look at her not just with admiration, but with a love so consuming it would define both their lives forever. Jacob had been traveling for weeks, fleeing from his brother Esau's murderous rage. He was alone, exhausted, carrying nothing but his staff and the weight of his past mistakes. He had cheated his brother out of their father's blessing, and now he was running for his life, heading toward his mother's homeland to find refuge with his uncle Laban. As he approached the region of Paddan Aram, Jacob came upon a well in the field. 3 flocks of sheep were lying beside it, waiting. The stone covering the well's mouth was massive, too heavy for one person to move alone. It was the custom to wait until all the flocks had gathered, then the shepherds would roll away the stone together and water their sheep. Jacob approached the shepherds and asked them where they were from. They answered, "We're from Haran." Jacob's heart quickened. "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" he asked. They nodded. "Yes, we know him." Then Jacob asked the question that would change everything. "Is he well?" The shepherds replied, "He is well. And look, here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep." Jacob looked up, and there she was, walking toward the well with her father's flock, the afternoon sun lighting her face, moving with the kind of beauty that doesn't need announcement. Rachel. And in that single moment, everything in Jacob's world shifted. His exhaustion vanished. His past seemed to fade. He saw her, and something awakened in him that had never existed before. This wasn't mere attraction. This was love, instant and overwhelming. The kind of love that poets write about and skeptics dismiss as impossible. But it was happening to Jacob, right there at the well, as Rachel drew closer with the sheep following behind her. Jacob didn't wait for the other shepherds. He didn't follow custom or protocol. In a surge of strength fueled by emotion, he stepped forward and rolled the massive stone away from the well's mouth all by himself, something that normally required multiple men. He watered Laban's flock while Rachel watched, probably surprised by this stranger's boldness and strength. And then Jacob did something even more extraordinary. He kissed Rachel. Right there, in front of everyone, this man she had just met kissed her. And then he lifted up his voice and wept. He wept because he had found her. He wept because after all the running, all the fear, all the uncertainty, something good had finally entered his life. He wept because he was home, not because he had arrived at a location, but because he had found the person his heart had been searching for. Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative, Rebekah's son. Rachel's eyes must have widened with recognition and excitement. She ran home immediately to tell her father. And when Laban heard the news that his sister's son had arrived, he ran to meet Jacob, embraced him, kissed him, and brought him into his house. For 1 month, Jacob stayed with Laban, working alongside him, helping with the flocks, integrating into the household. And every day, every moment, he fell deeper in love with Rachel. He watched her move through her daily tasks with grace. He listened to her laugh. He learned her ways, her personality, her heart. And the more he knew her, the more certain he became. This was the woman he wanted to marry. This was the woman he would do anything to have as his wife. After Jacob had been with Laban for about a month, Laban approached him with a proposition. "Just because you are my relative, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me, what should your wages be?" Jacob didn't hesitate. He had already decided. He looked Laban directly in the eyes and made an offer that revealed the depth of his love. "I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter." 7 years. Not 7 days. Not 7 months. 7 years of his life, the prime years of his youth, given as the bride price for Rachel. In that culture, this was an extraordinary offer. Most men would negotiate for less time, offer livestock or silver, find a way to shorten the commitment. But Jacob offered 7 years without hesitation, without regret, without second thoughts. Because Rachel was worth it. Because when you find the person who makes your heart come alive, no price is too high, no sacrifice too great, no time too long. Laban, recognizing an incredible deal, quickly agreed. "It's better that I give her to you than to another man. Stay with me." And so Jacob began his service. 7 years of hard labor. 7 years of tending flocks in the burning sun and bitter cold. 7 years of waking before dawn and working until darkness fell. 7 years of calloused hands and weathered skin and exhausted nights. But here's what makes this story so extraordinary. The scripture says those 7 years seemed to Jacob but a few days because of the love he had for Rachel. 7 years felt like a few days. Let that sink in. When you're working towards something you love, when you're pursuing someone who captures your entire heart, time transforms. The wait doesn't feel like suffering. It feels like preparation. It feels like investment. It feels like the most worthwhile thing you've ever done. Jacob didn't complain. He didn't grow bitter. He didn't question his decision. Every day, he saw Rachel. Every day, he was reminded why he was doing this. Every day, the future he was building with her became more real, more tangible, more certain. And Rachel knew she was loved. She knew that this man had looked at her once and decided she was worth 7 years of his life. She knew that while other women had to wonder if their husbands truly wanted them, she would never have that question. Jacob's love for her was displayed in the most public, undeniable way possible. But what neither Jacob nor Rachel knew was that Laban, Rachel's father, was already planning a deception. A scheme that would shatter their dreams on what should have been the happiest night of their lives. When the 7 years were completed, Jacob went to Laban with anticipation and joy. "Give me my wife, for my time is completed, that I may go into her." Laban agreed. He gathered all the people of the place and made a great feast. There was music, dancing, celebration, wine flowing freely. This was Jacob's wedding day, the day he had worked 7 years to reach. The day he would finally marry the woman he loved with his whole heart. But as evening fell and darkness covered the celebration, Laban executed his treacherous plan. Instead of bringing Rachel to Jacob's tent, he brought Leah, the older sister. Leah, who had watched Rachel be loved and chosen while she remained invisible and unwanted. Leah, whose tender eyes had seen her younger sister receive everything she herself longed for. In the darkness, heavily veiled according to custom, Leah was brought to Jacob's tent. And Jacob, thinking it was Rachel, thinking his 7 years of waiting were finally over, thinking he was about to hold the woman he loved, took her as his wife. But when morning came, when the first light of dawn crept into the tent, Jacob opened his eyes and saw not Rachel, but Leah, the wrong sister, the unwanted sister, the sister he had never chosen, never pursued, never loved. The betrayal must have hit him like a physical blow. The shock, the horror, the rage, all crashing over him at once. He had been deceived. He had been tricked. The most precious thing he had worked for, the love he had sacrificed 7 years to claim, had been stolen from him in a single night. Jacob stormed out to confront Laban, his voice shaking with fury. "What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" And Laban's response was cold, calculated, cultural. "It is not the custom in our place to give the younger before the firstborn. Leah must be married first. It's tradition. Complete the bridal week with Leah, and then I'll give you Rachel too. But you'll need to serve me another 7 years. Another 7 years. The price had just doubled. But Jacob didn't hesitate. He agreed immediately. Because Rachel was still worth it. Because even after being deceived, even after having his wedding night stolen, even after the humiliation and heartbreak, his love for Rachel hadn't diminished by a single degree. So Jacob completed the week with Leah, 7 days that must have been agony for all three of them. Leah knowing she was unwanted. Jacob counting the hours until he could be with Rachel. Rachel waiting in heartbreak, knowing her sister had spent the wedding week with the man who loved her. And when the week ended, Laban gave Rachel to Jacob as his second wife. And finally, after 7 years of work and a week of devastation, Jacob was married to the woman he loved. The scripture makes it clear, Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah. Not differently. Not in another way. More. Rachel had his heart completely. By the way, if you find this story moving or insightful, please consider subscribing to this channel. These videos take significant time to create with careful research and thoughtful production, and your subscription really helps us continue bringing you these powerful biblical narratives. Thank you for being here. But Rachel's story doesn't become easier from here. In fact, the very thing that should have made her life complete, marriage to the man who loved her absolutely, became the context for her deepest suffering. The scripture tells us with brutal honesty, when the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb. But Rachel was barren. God saw Leah's rejection and responded with compassion, giving her the ability to bear children. But Rachel, the beloved wife, the beautiful one, the woman Jacob loved more than anyone, could not conceive. In that ancient culture, a woman's worth was largely measured by her ability to bear children, especially sons. Children meant security, legacy, purpose, validation. A barren woman was viewed as cursed, as less than, as failing in her primary purpose. And Rachel, for all her beauty and all of Jacob's love, could not have the one thing that mattered most. Meanwhile, Leah conceived and bore a son. Then another. Then another. Each birth was a dagger in Rachel's heart. Each pregnancy announcement was a fresh wound. Rachel had to watch her sister, the woman Jacob didn't love, bear child after child while her own womb remained empty. Leah named her first son Reuben, saying, "Surely now my husband will love me." But Jacob's love remained with Rachel. Leah bore a second son, Simeon, saying, "The Lord has heard that I am hated." Still, Jacob loved Rachel more. Leah bore a third son, Levi, hoping, "Now my husband will be attached to me." But Jacob's heart never transferred to Leah. And Rachel watched it all. The births. The babies. The sons. Everything she wanted, everything she ached for, was happening to her sister. The sister who had Jacob's obligation but not his love. While Rachel had Jacob's complete devotion but none of the children that would have made her life complete. The pain must have been unbearable. Every day, seeing Leah's growing family. Every night, lying beside Jacob and feeling the emptiness in her own womb. Every moment, knowing she had everything except the one thing she wanted most. Rachel's anguish finally erupted in a moment of desperate confrontation. She went to Jacob and cried out, "Give me children, or I will die." Her words weren't melodrama. They were the raw expression of a woman whose entire identity and purpose felt dependent on something she couldn't control. Without children, what was she? Just a beautiful woman growing older. Just a beloved wife with an empty nursery. But Jacob's response was harsh, born from his own frustration and helplessness. "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" He was right, of course. He couldn't fix this. He couldn't make her conceive. But his words, truthful as they were, couldn't ease Rachel's pain. So Rachel did what many women in her position did. She gave Jacob her servant, Bilhah, saying, "Go into her, so that she may give birth on my behalf, that even I may have children through her." It was a culturally accepted practice, a way for a barren wife to build a family through a surrogate. But it was also a sign of Rachel's desperation, her willingness to try anything to have children, even if they weren't from her own body. Bilhah conceived and bore a son. Rachel named him Dan, meaning, "God has judged in my favor." Finally, a child she could claim as hers, even if she hadn't carried him. Bilhah conceived again and bore a second son. Rachel named him Naphtali, meaning, "I have wrestled," saying, I have wrestled with my sister and have prevailed. But these weren't the children of her own womb. They were substitutes, proxies, reminders that she still couldn't conceive on her own. And when Leah saw what Rachel had done, she gave her own servant Zilpah to Jacob, and Zilpah bore 2 more sons, Gad and Asher. The competition between the sisters had become fierce and painful, both women using every means available to prove their worth, to win significance, to gain some measure of victory in this battle neither of them had chosen. Then came an incident that revealed just how broken their relationship had become. During wheat harvest, Leah's son Reuben found mandrakes in the field. Mandrakes were plants believed to enhance fertility, and Rachel, still desperate to conceive, wanted them. She came to Leah and asked, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But Leah's response was raw and bitter. "Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? You took my husband." After all these years, after all these children, the wound was still there. Leah had borne 6 sons for Jacob, but she still felt that Rachel had taken what should have been hers. The love, the devotion, the choice. Rachel, desperate and willing to negotiate, made a deal. "Very well, Jacob may sleep with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes." Think about how humiliating this was. These women were bargaining for time with their own husband, trading nights with him like he was a commodity. So when Jacob came in from the field that evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." And Jacob went with her. That night, Leah conceived again and eventually bore a 5th son, Issachar. Later, she bore a 6th son, Zebulun, and then a daughter, Dinah. But Rachel still remained barren. The mandrakes didn't work. The negotiations didn't help. Nothing changed. She was still the beloved wife with empty arms and an aching heart. And then, finally, after years of waiting, after years of watching everyone else bear children, after years of feeling like God had forgotten her, something shifted. The scripture says, "Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb." God remembered, not because he had forgotten, but because his timing had finally arrived. God had been working all along, through the pain, through the waiting, through the barrenness. And now, in his perfect moment, he opened Rachel's womb. Rachel conceived. For the first time in her marriage, her own body carried a child. For the first time, she didn't have to claim someone else's son. For the first time, she felt life growing within her. And when her son was born, Rachel named him Joseph, which means, "May he add," saying, "God has taken away my reproach. May the Lord add to me another son." Even in her joy, even in the fulfillment of her deepest longing, Rachel was already looking ahead, already hoping for more. She wanted another son. She had waited so long, suffered so much, that one son couldn't fully satisfy the years of emptiness. Joseph became the beloved son, the favored child, the one who carried both his mother's beauty and his father's complete devotion. Jacob loved Joseph more than all his other children because he was the son of Rachel, the woman Jacob loved most. And that favoritism would eventually cause immense pain and division in the family, but in those early years, Rachel finally had what she had always wanted. She had Jacob's love. She had beauty that hadn't faded. And now she had a son. Years passed. Jacob decided it was time to return to Canaan, to the land of his fathers. He had been in Paddan Aram for over 20 years, had built his wealth, had grown his family, and now God was calling him home. It was time to face his past, to reconcile with Esau, to claim the inheritance that was rightfully his. The journey was long and difficult. Rachel traveled with Jacob, along with Leah and all their children and servants, a massive caravan moving slowly through the wilderness. And Rachel was pregnant again. God had granted her second prayer. She was carrying another son. But this pregnancy was different. Something was wrong. As they traveled, Rachel went into labor prematurely, far from home, far from help, on the road to Bethlehem. The labor was hard, brutal, the kind of childbirth that midwives feared. Rachel was in severe distress, her strength failing, her life slipping away with every moment. The midwife tried to encourage her. "Do not fear, for you have another son." Another son. The very thing Rachel had prayed for. The answer to her request. But Rachel was dying, and she knew it. She could feel her life ebbing away, could sense that she wouldn't survive to hold this child, to watch him grow, to be his mother. With her last breath, Rachel named him Benoni, which means, son of my sorrow. Not because the child was sorrowful, but because his birth had cost her everything. Because joy and tragedy had arrived in the same moment. Because the gift she had longed for had become the means of her death. And then Rachel died. Right there on the road to Bethlehem, surrounded by her family but unable to finish the journey home. She died giving life, died bringing forth the son she had desperately wanted, died in the very act of answered prayer. Jacob was devastated. The love of his life, the woman he had worked 14 years to marry, the woman whose beauty had captivated him at first sight, was gone. He held her body, wept over her, mourned the loss of the person who had defined his entire adult life. Rachel, the beloved, was dead. Jacob buried her there on the road to Bethlehem and set up a pillar over her tomb, a monument to mark the place where his heart had been buried along with his wife. And he changed their son's name from Benoni to Benjamin, which means, son of my right hand, refusing to let the boy carry the burden of being called, son of sorrow. Rachel's tomb stood there for generations, reminder of the woman who was loved absolutely but died too young, who was beautiful beyond measure but suffered deeply, who finally received her heart's desire only to lose her life in the getting of it. Rachel's story is not the fairy tale it appears to be at first glance. Yes, she was beautiful. Yes, she was loved. Yes, she was chosen and pursued and adored. But beauty didn't protect her from pain. Love didn't shield her from suffering. Being chosen didn't mean her life would be easy. Rachel's greatest suffering came precisely in the area that mattered most to her, motherhood. She had Jacob's love, but that wasn't enough. She had stunning beauty, but that brought no comfort. She was the favored wife, but she envied her unloved sister who could bear children easily. Sometimes the things we want most become the things that cause us the greatest pain. Sometimes answered prayers come with costs we never anticipated. Sometimes getting what we've always dreamed of happens in ways we never imagined. Rachel finally had her sons, but she didn't live to raise them. She finally conceived, but pregnancy killed her. She finally held her second son, but only for moments before death claimed her. The very blessing she had prayed for, the very gift she had begged God to give her, became the instrument of her death. And yet, Rachel's legacy didn't end with her death on that roadside. Her son Joseph would become the second most powerful man in Egypt, the one who would save his entire family from starvation, the one through whom God would preserve the line that would eventually produce the Messiah. Her son Benjamin would become the father of a tribe that would produce Israel's first king, Saul, and later the Apostle Paul. Rachel died young, but her impact echoed through generations. She was buried on the road to Bethlehem, and centuries later, when Herod murdered the innocent children in Bethlehem, the prophet Jeremiah would write about Rachel weeping for her children, her grief transcending death itself, her love for her offspring continuing beyond the grave. Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah, and that love was evident even in death. While Rachel was buried on the roadside with honor and a pillar marking her grave, when Jacob himself was dying years later, he spoke of Rachel with tenderness and lingering sorrow. She remained the love of his life until his final breath. So what do we learn from Rachel's story? What does her life teach us about beauty, love, suffering, and the complicated way God works in our lives? First, external blessings don't guarantee internal peace. Rachel had beauty, love, and eventually children, but she struggled with envy, desperation, and deep unhappiness for years. The things the world tells us will make us happy, beauty, being chosen, being loved, those things are good, but they're not enough. They can't fill the deepest places in our hearts. Second, comparison will poison even the greatest blessings. Rachel had something Leah desperately wanted, Jacob's love. But instead of finding contentment in that, Rachel focused on what Leah had that she didn't, children. We can spend so much time envying others' blessings that we completely miss the unique gifts God has given us. Third, God's timing often doesn't match our expectations. Rachel waited years to conceive. Years of watching her sister bear child after child. Years of feeling forgotten and overlooked. But God hadn't forgotten her. He was working on a timeline that didn't match Rachel's desires but ultimately served a greater purpose. Joseph's birth timing was perfect for God's plan, even though it felt devastatingly late to Rachel. Fourth, answered prayers can come with unexpected costs. Rachel prayed for children and God gave her 2 sons. But the second son's birth cost her life. Sometimes the very things we're certain will complete us come with prices we never anticipated. That doesn't mean we shouldn't pray or ask or desire, but it means we must trust God with both the granting and the cost of our requests. Fifth, being loved deeply by someone doesn't exempt you from suffering. Jacob loved Rachel more than he had ever loved anyone. He worked 14 years to marry her. He favored her above everyone else. But his love couldn't make her conceive. His love couldn't ease her pain. His love couldn't save her life. Human love, even the deepest and most devoted, has limits. Only God's love is sufficient for every need. Finally, your story matters even if it ends differently than you hoped. Rachel died young, on a roadside, away from home, in the midst of giving life. It wasn't the ending anyone would have chosen. But her impact didn't end with her death. Her sons shaped history. Her love story became legendary. Her grave became a memorial. Her life mattered, even though it was shorter and more painful than she deserved. Rachel's story reminds us that the most beautiful lives can hold the deepest sorrows. That being chosen and beloved doesn't mean you won't suffer. That the things we want most desperately might come to us in ways we never expected and with costs we never imagined. But it also reminds us that God sees every tear, knows every longing, and works all things, even the painful things, even the tragic things, for purposes greater than we can understand in the moment. Rachel was loved absolutely. She was beautiful beyond measure. She was buried with honor, and her legacy continues thousands of years after her death, a testament to a life that mattered deeply despite ending too soon. Perhaps you see yourself in Rachel's story. Perhaps you're the one everyone thinks has it all together, but inside you're wrestling with pain no one sees. Perhaps you're waiting for something you want desperately, watching others receive what you long for. Perhaps you're learning that being chosen and loved, while precious, doesn't exempt you from suffering. Rachel's story tells you that God sees you, that your pain matters, that your waiting has purpose, that the things you're longing for may come in ways you don't expect, but they will come in God's perfect timing. And that your life, no matter how it unfolds, no matter how it ends, can have an impact that echoes through eternity. The beloved wife who struggled with barrenness became the mother of Joseph, who saved nations from famine. The beautiful woman who died too young became a symbol of maternal love so powerful it transcends death itself. The woman buried on a roadside became a memorial that would stand for thousands of years. God wastes nothing. Not the beauty, not the love, not the pain, not even the tragic death. He weaves it all into a story that matters, a legacy that endures, a purpose that outlives us. If Rachel's story has touched your heart today, if you're learning to trust God with both your blessings and your pain, I want you to do 3 things. First, leave a comment below and share one thing this story revealed to you. Maybe it's about comparison, or waiting, or trusting God's timing. Your comment could be exactly what another viewer needs to read today. Second, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Every week we bring you these carefully crafted biblical narratives, exploring the lives of men and women whose stories still speak to us today. Stories that don't just inform you about ancient history, but transform how you see your own life and God's work in it. Third, share this video with someone who needs to hear Rachel's story. Someone who looks like they have everything but is secretly struggling. Someone who's waiting for answered prayer. Someone who needs to know that being loved and blessed doesn't mean life will be easy, but that God is faithful through every season. Because this isn't just an ancient story about people who lived thousands of years ago. This is a mirror reflecting truths about beauty, love, suffering, and God's faithfulness that are just as relevant today as they were in Rachel's time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for engaging with these stories. And may Rachel's life remind you that your story matters, your pain has purpose, and God is weaving something beautiful even in the midst of your waiting. God bless you deeply. Until the next story.